What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Organic Guy podcast. This is your home of organic conversations. I am your host, the Organic Guy, and around here we have conversation around how we can make our food system really work for us rather than against us. So today I do have a special guest with us, and it just happens to like drylands and deserts. So he'll sort of help us, understand why and the reasoning behind it. He also happens to be the co-founder and managing director of AGAR Ltd. So he goes by the name of Tommaso Menini. So Tommaso, thank you very much for making time for the pod.
Thanks for having me.
We'll just go straight to it. What are you doing in the dryland, man? I mean, there's so many other places in the country you could be spending more of your time, but what's happening?
Not just that, in the world. I could be in Milan, fashion capital, where I was born and raised. And I had a job, actually. My father was, my role model, if you wish, like other boys. So I was, looking up to him and wanted to be him. But you know how things happen. What John Lennon says, life is that things that happen when you're busy making plans. So I was in Australia. I moved to Kenya last time in 2014, because my son was born in Australia with a Kenyan woman. So we came back together. And that's how I actually, stayed in Kenya. And Arid just happened because I took my first posting with an NGO in Isiolo, but they looked at my past and my CV, of course, and they looked at 2 years in Karamoja, northeast Uganda, which is Uganda's arid lands. I say this because compared to our arid lands, they're lush, but it's still compared to Uganda's territory and environment, it is pretty arid. So that's pretty much how I got to Isiolo. And from Isiolo, I realized that there was potential in arid lands under a commercial sense. And here I am. I founded AGAR.
So take me through, you mentioned a little bit about Milan and you're getting this out to Australia and then to Kenya. So take me back to your early days. So I'm talking about high school, like primary school, if you have it in Italy. So who are you in terms of personality? Are you sort of talkative? Are you quiet? So what's happened?
So quite interesting. In my childhood, I had a speech impediment. I was stammering, right? I had a stuttering problem. So I say that because it is quite a factor in my early days. But looking back at, which I did recently, looking back at the videos, back in the day, you have the little cassettes. My dad was taking these videos at Maldives and other holidays. I thought I was a, shy stammerer, because most of the time when you stammer, it's not very easy to be confident. In fact, that's usually the problem of stuttering. It's not a hardware problem with your jaw, it's software. So that's what my mom worked on, and they boosted my confidence, and I just grew out of it. But funny enough, looking at the tapes from back then, I was very talkative as a stutterer. I did not remember that. So I was never shy. I was never introvert. I am 99.9% extrovert if you look at personality tests. And that was always my nature. And although that caused me some problem, because as you know, very vocal, very extrovert kids, they always get in trouble because we don't stay silent when we should. So I actually had a lot of discipline issues growing up, because I could not just, stand for what I believed at least was injustice. That also translated in me bullying bullies. So because I was picked on when I was a stammerer, and then I just grew too big and strong for them to bully me, I looked at other guys being bullied and I just defend them. And I believe that's an important anecdote. Why? Because that is when I started defending the defenseless and having a very protective nature, which then translated into the personality that I am. I am very protective. And it is part of the attitude that made me into the man that I am now and threw me into the line of work that I am. Because in a way, what I do, empowerment, conservation, it is a protection of the environment, of the communities. I try my best to protect and empower, right? That's where it started.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I do believe that where you grow up and how you grow up really shapes who you become in the long term. So take me back to Milan. So I'm trying to understand, like, how is the environment in terms of like your parents back then? Are they entrepreneurial? Like, what is the activity like?
So look, my parents right now are the sun and the moon. They couldn't be more different. My dad is an entrepreneur like me, small business owner, company that had up to 15, 20 employee. Well, that's where I am right now, by the way. I'm reliving part of his life. And insurance is still his business, right? So that's my dad. Super good salesperson, very charismatic. I've looked up to him, as I was telling you. But my mom was just equally very, very capable in whatever she was doing. She now is a wellness expert. She's an holistic therapist. So she's a nutritionist, a yogi, a masseuse, and a meditation expert, if I use that term. But in general, wellness is what she does, right? And they're both in their 70s, and they're still working. They just enjoy working. They like what they're doing, right? And I couldn't be more blessed to have the parents that I have, because they put me in the condition that I am, meaning they helped me for school, they helped me for my business. I mean, not every parent does that. I had incredible parents growing up, even if they separated, right? Like many couples, they remain in absolutely fantastic terms, and I never really felt much of a trauma for parent separation. And Milan was great. I mean, Milan is an international city. You get to experience fashion, finance. You get to experience I'm an Inter Milan, fan, in case you follow football as well. You have top-notch football. You have Milan is it could be a capital in another country that doesn't have Rome, right? So my upbringing was absolutely fantastic. I was blessed to have the family that I had. I've started working early, so my work ethic was built from an early stage. By the age of 14, 15, I was working every weekend in my brother's pizzeria. I have a brother again that, sort of built my character, because he's an older brother, and you know how they can be, right? So I was the smaller sibling, and they really push you. They really develop your character, right? The older siblings, and what can I say? Liberal families, liberal thinkers, travelers. My family traveled with me. They traveled before I was born. So I was born in a liberal setting with exposure to travel, to culture, and that definitely was significant for my upbringing.
Yeah. I mean, for us, like, the first exposure to Milan is, of course, through football. So that is the first time we get to hear, and in Italy. So football has really helped us in terms of knowing a lot of European cities, whether it's Rome. Yeah. So, I mean, coming that from you, it makes creates us a little bit of memories the first time we're remembering those places.
When I talk football to people from this area, it doesn't matter that I'm from Milan and I need to pick up a Premier League side for some reason. And I tell them, guys, I don't have a Premier League team because I have a very good team from my own hometown. And again, unfortunately, I was forced into picking one, because otherwise I couldn't speak football with these guys back in Uganda. And back then I picked Manchester City because of Mancini and Balotelli being there, going right after Inter Milan. So Mancini, Balotelli, they win the championship, they win the Champions League, and then they move to Man City. That year I'm forced to pick a team. I picked the team that had an Inter Milan factor there, but I don't really support Man City. Yeah. They beat us in the Champions League final even, so no.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a marketing thing, I guess, for us. I mean, they were sort of here first, and I think competitively, they sort of have the best league.
I agree with you. Yeah. We used to be the best in the 90s. If you look back, incredible players. We're still the more tactical league in the world in terms of marketing, in terms of income, in terms of exposure. Premier League is ahead of everyone else.
Yeah. So talk me about your time in Kenya and relocating to Kenya. I mean, what was your first experiences being in Kenya, and just experiences with Kenyans? Just be honest. How was it?
Look, just because I am by trait and personality very straightforward, I'm called rude in Kenya nearly on a weekly basis. Just for instance, this is a true story. Every employee that enters my company, I give a disclaimer at the beginning of the contract. I says, look, I will eventually raise my voice and shout because this is what is culturally acceptable where I come from, and this is how we out our frustration. It has nothing to do with trying to humiliate you, attack you, abuse you. It's just me being frustrated and raising our voices in Italy. It's not a big deal. Yeah. But here it is. Even in Uganda, Tanzania was murder, raising your voice, because everyone is so softly spoken. I try to adapt as much as possible. So this was, one of those cultural differences between where I come from and all of East Africa, not just Kenya. Because I first moved to Tanzania for a few months. I did a volunteering, a project that there in an area called, near a town called Musoma. In fact, it was a place called Butiama, a small village called Busegwe. And then I realized I love rural Africa. I just like that setting. I just love being part of a project that could create an impact, right? But I was always a business person. So I was always looking at business opportunities, even when I was volunteering, or even when I moved to Uganda and I started my NGO career. Yeah. So Uganda was fundamental to understand, not only that I enjoyed rural Africa, East Africa per se, but that I also had a thing for arid lands. So I started moving around and seeing what opportunities were there. And in Uganda, I started creating income generation activities, setting up businesses for NGOs. But that's still part of my, profile, if you wish. So then after Uganda in 2014, I did 2010 to 2012. In 2012, I moved back to Australia, where I had done my studies, right? And I decided with my mom, who was the force behind my Australia experience, because she really thought I could do very well in a beautiful country like Australia. She was like, why don't we reinvest in Australia where you can get a visa and we can get permanent residencies here? And I thought it was a good idea. When I went there, number one, I really missed being here. I felt I was not meant to be in Australia anymore. I felt I was meant to be here. So I suffered a little bit. I could not get a job within the sector where I started, which is now development, even community development, because I had international development experience, specifically in the field. And in Australia, development was, thank you so much, was mostly community development, as in drug and alcohol, disability, and homeless people. So I had no experience in any of that. So I had to go back to retail, which is what I did in my 20s. I was a salesperson and a boutique manager, a shop manager. I did 4 or 5 years of retail, and I was good at that because, after all, selling is what I do. Yeah. So, in a nutshell, I came back to Kenya in 2014 because in 2013, my son was born in Australia, in Sydney, with a Kenyan partner.
Ah, okay. So you met in Australia?
We met in Australia. We got together, we had a child. Then we decided, as a couple, to move to Kenya for the maternity leave, because us not being Australian, we had absolutely no benefits. Yeah. And Australia is expensive. So we came to Kenya pretty much together, and we separated shortly after, but I was here, they were here. Yeah. Clearly I want to stay close to my son. So I looked for a job, and I found it with an Italian NGO. That's how I got to be in Kenya. First time I visited Kenya was when I was in Uganda for a weekend, and it was just fun. And we're talking about 2010, and Havana in Westlands was already there. And I remember being in Westlands, clubbing, and just having a good time. Yeah. But then when I got back in 2014, I was looking for a job. That's a different scenario. Yeah. And I got one with an Italian NGO in Isiolo, which takes us back to the question before about how I started. And Kenya is now my country. I will definitely invest in a permanent residency. I will be eligible in 1 year. So I'm here to stay. I'm here to stay. Inichi yangu sasa.
Okay, a little bit of Swahili. Okay, that's good.
Just I know enough to make people think that I know a lot. But I love Kenya, and other times I detest things about Kenya, just like I do with my country.
Yeah.
You know, we are very, very critical for things and people that we love, right? That we feel attached to. If I didn't have any love for Kenya, I wouldn't care. I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't suffer the things that you suffer in this country, right? So Kenya has so much potential, even government-wise. I mean, look at the amount of educated human capital that is coming up. Everyone has a degree. Everyone, and let me tell you something else about Kenya that I love. Everyone has a side hustle. Everyone is an entrepreneur. Like even the primary school teacher sells some hair on the side. To be honest, this is one thing that I love the most about Kenya, this entrepreneurial capacity, this capacity to just create income out of nothing, and sits very well, with what I do. Yeah. And I'm a business coach on the side, right? Wow. So I love coaching youth specifically in telling them, your side hustles could be doing better if you do 1-1-1. Yeah. And after a while, I'm sorry to say, but if you want to succeed in something, can't be your side hustle. Yeah. Just pick it, proceed with it, build on it.
Okay. Interesting you just mentioned about that. So take me through establishing AGAR, right? So you come here, you've been sent to Isiolo, and you're just working with people around there, and you say, you know what, I think there's a potential in what these guys are doing, and you want to start a company.
So part of the project, the main component of the project was alternative livelihood. These specifically were honey and gum and raisins, okay? Because arid lands don't have so much, right? Because of the territory. And I looked into it as a businessman. I looked into it immediately as someone that needs to find out a commercial exit, not an exit strategy only, which is a very NGO jargon, right? But because this is a livelihood component, we need to understand how to make sure that this livelihood is sustainable when the NGO leaves. So I looked for a private sector that could pick up when the NGO left, which is so obvious. I don't understand why so little NGOs actually take a private sector from the very first step, even from design, because too many times NGOs create, unfortunately, bottlenecks. They create a livelihood, they create a value chain, or they enforce a value chain, but they don't connect it to the market early enough, and unfortunately that's a bottleneck. So what I did was look for a private sector, and unfortunately I couldn't find any proper private sector that had compliance, that had procedures, that had reliability to be that take off, right? Partner. So I became that private sector. So I said, okay, let me do it. So I started doing gum Arabic specifically for the first year. I had partnered with an associate in Kenya, which unfortunately misappropriated funds, within the first month. The first month already 2 million lost. So I was like, okay, let me do this, let me start over, let me count my losses, and based on the personality that I have, which is absolutely resilient and unforgiving in terms of effort, I just started AGAR, and I said, I learned, how I counted the losses. My mom told me, how much did we lose? Because she gave me part of the capital. And I said, about $20,000. And she was like, Tommaso, that's your MBA. That's the MBA that you wanted to do, because I wanted to do an MBA, right? But then that cost me the same amount of an MBA, and I was like, okay, I learned, and I need to do better. So I looked for other associates, I found them, and in 2018 I started AGAR Ltd on a fresh ground of trust, of capacity, of networks, because by then I had already created a number of networks of collectors, traders, and And in 2018, we consolidated the Gamma Arabic and Frankincense network, and we started buying and reselling. But we understood straight away that if we don't start transforming these products, margins won't be good enough. So that's how the first line of essential oil was started in 2019, called Essenza. And Essenza then, with time, started having shea butter, baobab, and the aloe line, right? But then we realized we need a rebranding, and that's how Jua came by. But 2018, I founded AGAR on those grounds, right? I lost something, but I still believe in this project. I won't allow this to stop me. And you know, now is only a part of a success story, rather than being something that caused me to fail.
That's a really interesting sort of explanation you've given and your journey in terms of establishing AGAR, being posted at a place and then seeing an opportunity within that place. So that leads me to ask you a really important question that a lot of people have tried to answer. Which camp do you mostly fall into? Do you think entrepreneurs are made or they're born?
Both, and I believe the answer is both. I mean that you cannot be made, or it's very hard to be made, even if you go to the best business schools, you have role models. It's like someone said to me, in fact, there was a personal trainer that once told me, if you're born a gazelle, you can't be a lion. He was talking about muscle and the fact that I had already a structure that allowed me to build certain muscle. But if you are born with a very slim structure, no matter how much weight you lift, you won't be a very big guy, one of those gym bros, right? As much as you try. Equally so, if you're born with personality trait that go very much against what a classic entrepreneur usually looks like, and this is being very introvert, because I coach introvert people into being business people, and it's not easy, because when you are a business person, you need to sell your brand, you need to sell your idea, you need to sell your service. Now, that's why co-founders are there, right? So if you have an introvert person, that person could do other things in a business. You can still be an entrepreneur. But in the classic sense of the term, which is the guy that goes pitching, an entrepreneur pitches, right? I mean, if you want to have investors, donors, networks of distribution, you need to pitch your product, you need to pitch your service, and to be pitching, you need to be comfortable in front of people. If you are shy by nature, it's tough. I've seen people crumble by pitching. It's actually very painful to watch. And if you're born like that, you need to work a lot. But once again, I was born with a speech impediment. Now I don't have it anymore. And I am pretty damn good at pitching. Yeah. I was made into pitching. I wasn't born with it, but I was born being an extrovert. I was born being communicative. I was born being proactive. And then I had parents that were. So in my opinion, I was born for myself. Okay. But then again, looking up to my dad, I could see the sort of dynamic and the sort of charisma that is part of being, a vocal entrepreneur, and that made me even more into the classic sense of an entrepreneur. But then again, that's the classic sense. If you're not born with those characteristics, you can still be an entrepreneur. You will just not do the things that require that in your face sort of personality, which I believe it's needed. Americans, for instance, their culture, it's very in your face, right? Yeah. They are brought up with go big, go home, and just the American dream. You just go and get it, yeah. Right? That culture, it's a plus for them, because allow them to come up with that sort of, exactly. But then again, then you have cultures that don't really push for you to be vocal. They don't really push women to be entrepreneurial because of cultural values that are quite obsolete by now, right? Look at Kenya and look at the amount of women that get into business now. It's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. So once again, if we were not born with certain traits and characteristics and our culture did not give it to us, we can still go get it.
So I see it's sort of a mixture of both. And yeah, you personally lean towards being born.
Not 100% either, but for me, it is my personality from birth to be very extrovert.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about some of the works you've done, especially from AGAR. You've gone on to spin of a little bit of different brands from it. So now you have Jua by AGAR, right? Yeah. So what is the reasoning behind it, and why was it important for you to maintain by AGAR in the brand itself?
Thank you, because it's not the first time that people ask me that, and some people ask me to remove it. It says, why don't you just do Jua, right? It is already Jua. I mean, even if there is a by AGAR in the logo, no one says Jua by AGAR. It's already Jua. I give you an example of another business, also owned and run by Italians. I don't know if you know of Non Solo Gelato by Anna. Non Solo Gelato is one of the first movers of top Italian ice cream. And they have a branch in Village Market, they have a branch in Mutaiga, they have a branch in Watamu, they have two branches in Watamu, they have a branch in Yaya. They are growing organically. Is a couple, and they're both incredible. Non Solo Gelato by Anna, right, has that by Anna that compasses the passion that she puts into that compasses the idea, the concept that was brought by her, developed by more people, but brought up by her. And it's a guarantee of quality. AGAR, similarly speaking, is the vision behind Jua. So by keeping by AGAR there, you keep the connection with the groundwork that we do upcountry. In a nutshell, that's what it is. Yeah. And I have been meaning to rebrand for much longer than I actually then happened to do in 2023. It was last year. My associate, my majority shareholder, who's also my best friend, have been telling me for at least a couple of years, already in 2020, say, look, I don't think Essenza, it's really working, the branding and the name. Yeah. And I was like, we just launched it, give me some more time. But I had to listen to him, and yet I did listen to him, maybe subconsciously, because I had already in mind, in 2021, the name Jua. It's like my son's name. I never had any other options. I was proposed, actually. It was not my idea. But I was proposed Dante. I was like, yes, Dante is the great name for an Italian child who's also mixed. And Jua was the same sort of, I never thought about any other name. If I had to rebrand, it would have been Jua. So in 2022, we took the opportunity of a big client asking us to have another brand, not Essenza. And that's what I needed as an excuse, if you wish, to get Essenza out of the way. And end of 2022, we launched Essenza. Can I pick one of the products? Yeah, sure. I just brought props because I always do. So this is Jua, one of the many products that we have. And I thought about the logo and I thought about the name much, much before the actual change of brands. And I did a few focus group discussions. I talked to my board. I didn't just go ahead with Jua. Yeah. But Jua resonated with everyone. The name, Jua, of course, it's sun, right? Because there is a lot of sun where we work. A lot. Scorching sun. And then I did like the sort of kujua, entendeur. And I like the fact that you could work on both sun and knowledge. And we created Jua Watu, which is a concept of awareness behind what we do. So Jua was the beginning of a number of lines. Now we created Jua Tamu, which is a line of edible products. We have now honey, we have now juice from cactus, and and jam from cactus. And soon we'll have desiccated mango chips, dried mango. So we have invested a lot in Jua, but it all started with one essential oil which was our first value addition from Frankincense. And then we just built brick by brick, just like the pyramid or a house.
Yeah, it's a really good name in terms of you can see it's very easy to bring other brands into the name itself. So you've talked about Mongol sheeps and
Juakali is wait now, because I'm good with compliance, so I trademarked Jua by AGAR. I registered a business name. I registered Juawatu. I registered Juatamu. I'm registering Juakali. That's a lot more because there is a lot of Juakali businesses, but the thing is, it's not Juakali that I'm registering. It's Kali, because so we have a tattoo cream now. And I thought Kali was great because Kali is hot. It kind of gives you the tattoo, right? Sort of idea. But the brand is Jua. So it's Kali by Jua. In short, it's Jua Kali, right? And I think that Jua Kali is the concept of Juakalism is both a strength and a weakness for the Kenyan ecosystem. Because we have a lot of informality in Kenya. Largely, the majority of sector is informal. But then again, like Juakali, it's a brand sometimes of proud, right? You're blue collar. You're putting work in what you're doing. It might be Juakali. Sometimes you say it's a bit Juakali what you're doing, right? But then in a way also it's a culture that I sort of appreciated. And I've also helped. Someone start with a Juakali process, right? It's something that is done a little bit too, informally. I see the potential, and I want to support that in becoming more formal and more built from the ground up, more compliant. So
yeah. Just to add, you do know we have a Juakali, the musician.
yeah, I do know. There is other things called Juakali. That's why I need to see. And again, I'm registering Kali, but it's Kali by Jua, so not really Juakali. And that tattoo cream, I have pre-orders from Los Angeles and London. It's gonna be huge. You just wait and see. You heard it here first.
Yeah. You've talked about the impact in being really into helping, where you work, especially some of the work that you've done with AGAR so far. Is there an example you can share with us with maybe a community you've worked with or a farmer you've worked with and you've really seen change in terms of transforming them to becoming better or just helping their situations better?
I'm pretty sure that at the end of this, there will be a display of our social media handles and again, you can share our platforms. If you look at our YouTube channel, and please subscribe, we have like 82 subscribers. We have a lot of visibility, a lot of media being built on what we do. And you can see from KTN, you can see from BBC even had a Smart Money episode on us. There are people that are interviewed and they actually give you hard numbers. They moved from table banking of goat rearing into resins, collecting, and we buy it. One time we might buy 50 kgs. And of AGAR, which is a type of Myrrh, it's still like 40, 50K. That's a lot of goats. Yes. And doesn't require startup capital. It requires time and effort because the resources are on trees. You don't need money to get it. You need probably some equipment, if you can, and time, and good, strong legs, because you might have to walk a lot. Last month, we bought 0.5 ton of frankincense for our own distillation. And that's more than 100,000 going towards a trader. And that trader will use the money to keep on buying from the collectors that come with 5 kgs, 10 kgs, 2 kgs. You see, pastoralist communities are by nature built on today and tomorrow. It's not easy for them to plan because the nature of their life, it's now. Because of the harsh environment that they worked, because of livestock not being drought resistant or being raided today or tomorrow. So it's a day by day, although it's changing a little bit. So I cannot tell a collector, do 1 ton and I'll come. It's impossible. I need to tell a trader, let me know when you have a ton. I would like collectors to work in cooperatives, but sometimes we use these traders, which people call brokers sometimes, and I don't know what. Kenya has an obsession with brokers in a negative way. Yeah. I've heard this, he's a broker, as if you are the son of the devil. Brokers are needed as well. The problem becomes when they become speculators. So they speculate. They move with no added value. Yeah. And even sometimes they're needed that way. In this case, the aggregators, they have a function. They aggregate something that I will come. I might not have an agent that can stay there. So this is examples of some of the work we do. So resins is bought from traders and collectors directly, women group and youth group mostly. And then, see another prop here? Yeah. So this beauty here is called aloe secundiflora. Please stop call aloes aloe vera. That's a common, you were about to do it?
Yes, I mean, that's what we know it by.
So aloe vera is one. Look, there is a snail. I didn't even see it. So it's very good, healthy plant. That's why she likes it. So this plant is an indigenous plant to Kenya. Aloe vera, barbadensis, is one of 500 species, and is not indigenous to Kenya. It's usually greener than this, and it grows vertically. This one grows more horizontally, right, sideways. So this is about 1 year old. So now this one is drought resistant. It's a desert plant. Aloe vera, that species, it's not. It requires better soil. It requires more water. There is not much water where we work. Yeah. So that is now a tool that is being sold and function as both a livelihood creation, because it will give you at maturity a resource that I will buy, and is a restoration tool, because that plant literally grows on anything. Rocks and sand are quintessentially degraded land, no? Yeah. That plant does very well on both sand and soil and rocks. So we offer sometimes NGOs, sometimes philanthropic individuals, sometimes private people that want to use aloe. We have a nursery, and we are starting new ones that grow that plant. We sell it with an outgrowing scheme. If you take care of it for the next 2 years, 2.5, I will come back and buy the leaves. And that's how we create more impact in arid lands, although it's not easy, because, again, going back to the cultural aspect, pastoralist communities are not used to take care of something for 2 years before it. Livestock, yes, but not a plant. So to tell people, you just take care of it, put water in this plant, and then I'll come back in 2 years, it's very tough. That's why I need partners, NGOs, agencies, philanthropic individuals, anything. County governments is very interested. Anyone that can help the communities manage the plant. Because I can give the inputs, plant and training, and I'll come back for the outputs. Yeah. But in the middle, we need someone else to.
Yes, to take through it as they wait. So we've talked about entrepreneurship. It sounds rosy, the way you're describing it. I mean, I saw a gap. I just went in and started a company. So, but I'm thinking it's a little bit harder than that when you really dig into it. So there's someone who may be watching this and they're thinking about starting a company. As you know, Kenya, there's high rates of unemployment at the moment. So what advice can you give to someone who wants to start a company, or someone who is unemployed and they are looking at ways they can, benefit themselves?
Now, I remember saying this in an interview with Ian Dennis at Late Business. So he asked me something similar, and I was like, I know what it means to be unemployed. I've been unemployed too, and I hated it because of also the sort of personality that I need to do something. Even when I go on holiday, my friend, after 10 days, I get bored. I need to work. I can't stay on holiday more than 10 days. I miss working. But when you're unemployed, it's a minute when you can lose track of a schedule and you become idle. You sleep in, you don't exercise, you binge. These days you can binge watch anything. You just become ineffective, inactive, and that could even lead to depression, anxiety. You need to stay active even when you're unemployed. When I was unemployed, I woke up at 7, I exercised, I went on my desk at 9, and I worked up to 5 on CV creation, research, assessments. I worked on myself. I didn't idle. I didn't watch television. I stayed active. And that's number one, that's important. Yeah. If you're unemployed, don't fall into that trap. and don't think that everything is wrong with the world and you can get a job. Just put some efforts in it, you'll get a job. So that's first. Number two is, if you have an idea, cross-check it against what's already there. We're in 2025 in a few months. Nearly everything has been built or invented, but there are gaps. So check the gap. See whether there is something that you don't have to invent, but you can improve. I was coming here when someone sent me something in Instagram about Biro and Bic. Biro was the guy that started. Biro is still what French use, Biro, to write, right?
Yeah.
And that Bic came in with an idea, say, wow, that pen looks good, but I think I can improve it. And Bic became what it is now because of two ideas to improve a concept that already existed. And now is mega company, right?
Yeah.
So you don't have necessarily to invent something. If you can, absolutely.
Yeah.
If there is space for invention and innovation, which is definitely there, go for it. But it doesn't have to be there. It can be something that is already existing, which you can improve, which you can make bulletproof, which you can add impact. Because if in 2024 going to 25, you have a company that does not create a positive impact, then you're part of the problem, if you ask me.
Yeah, so stay active and look something that you can do in the meantime.
You're never enough prepared. I have mentors myself. I mentor and I am mentored. And I will be mentored until, most likely my mentor has a mentor. So I go and get schooled by these people from the first minute to the last minute. Number one, they keep me humble, which is good because my ego could just click one day and I think that I know everything, which I don't. Even them, approaching 60 years old, they start sometimes a sentence with, look, I know nothing about it, but if you ask me, that little thing, I'm not sure. So the idea is to think that you know nothing, even when you think you do.
Yeah.
Even when you think you're an expert, just keep on building your expertise, keep on improving yourself, keep on adding up to your personal portfolio, right? So do your homework. Look at the sector, do a sector assessment, do a market research, because I've made that mistake too. I went into a sector not understanding some of the things, like for instance, gamma raising. Gamma arabic from Kenya, much higher in viscosity than any other gamma arabic. So it's a niche. Frankincense from Kenya, unknown to the rest of the world. Took me 6 years to export. We have aloe, right? It's not aloe vera, aloe secundiflora, aloe in A. So you need to understand what you're selling in terms of service or products. You need to be the master of your art, and you need to be a dreamer, if I can quote Dave Chappelle.
Yeah. You were in Kenya, I guess, when we had protests of late. I mean, they were protests that were majorly led by Gen Zs, sort of looking at government being more accountable to its citizens. I'm not sure it happens a lot in Italy and other European nations. So what was your overall observation about it? Do you think it was the right time for, like the young people to say, hey, maybe you guys need to change a little bit?
Look, as a businessman, I was advised to stay out of politics, mostly as a foreigner, because of obvious reasons. I'm not a citizen. I don't have right to vote. At the same time, I'm here building a company, paying taxes, creating employment, suffering when new taxes are introduced. So whether you like it or not, I'm part of this ecosystem, and I'm part of the social fabric of this nation, right? So after a decade of being here, I am definitely, being part of this country's rules and regulations, and I suffer or I benefit. When Gen Z took to the streets, they did it for me too, because it started with the financial bill, right?
Yes.
I also believe the financial bill was abusive for businesses, and I also understand the government perspective of having, a large loan and euro bonds, IMF, and look, I understand, and I understand that I've studied Kenyan history as well. I've looked at the sort of conservative spending that the Kibaki government did. Man, that man did so much for Kenya. It's incredible. It's great, but wasn't he an economist?
Yes.
I mean, that's who you want in charge, right? For an economy to work. So I understand that when the government came after, there was some little overspending and all of that, to use an euphemism. So I understand both parts, but still, something had to be done. And I do like the fact that the president took a lot of accountability, that he acted, and that a lot happened. Now is just time to look and see, whether it changes. Yeah. I remember one of the first time that I was doing this county cluster meetings and everything. My Swahili was, nil, and sometimes they spoke in English most of the time, but then they joked in Swahili, and I hated it because I couldn't understand any joke. Yeah. But I remember one of the first joke that someone translated to me was like, "What did I say? What? Wow, but it's a way in Swahili. It says you can change a forest if the monkeys remain the same," or something like this. It means in a nutshell that change can happen if you don't change some mechanism that allow to change to happen. If it's always the same structure, which is part of the problem, you cannot have a solution. Yes. So I really hope that change can come and that can really affect us in a positive way. Yeah. But I was as supportive as I could. I allowed my staff to take the day off in at least 3 occasions, so they could go and exercise their right.
There are so many ways that you can look at your journey so far. I mean, there has been ups and downs. There has been, moments where you are, I think I'm on the right path. But what do you think keeps you going in this situation? What is your motivation behind, working on AGAR and building these other brands?
So one of the things that I often coach, advise, right, or just mention, it's purpose. Most things have purpose, right? This microphone has a purpose, that table is a purpose. But me and you, we not necessarily have a purpose like machines, objects, or certain animals in the nature kingdom. Some humans live their life without a purpose, which, in my opinion, it's like a boat drifting in the sea. You don't know where you're going. But that said, I wasn't born with purpose. I got it later in life. I liked my work in Uganda. I knew that my vocation was for working in rural Africa because of the excitement of building something from scratch, right? For the lack of infrastructures, for the human capital needing some educational support with all of that sort of, frontier kind of work. And that was not yet my purpose because I was working for an NGO, right? But when I started AGAR, I realized this is it. Changing lives with what I do and trying to work on climate adaptation. It's what gets me up in the morning. You should really, really have that. When you're a parent, sometimes your purpose becomes your kids, right? Okay, shouldn't just be that. Your purpose should not just being a parent. Although parenting is, of course, phenomenal job to have. So I have purpose every morning, every few weeks, usually at the end of a day, most of the time at the end of a difficult day, Brian. I have this realization that I am exactly what I'm supposed to be doing, exactly what I'm supposed to be doing. That's what pushes me. That and my son. My son Dante is my drive. I am building something also because of legacy, also because of him being the next generation of humans, which will inherit Earth, right? And we're not really doing a good job with this inheritance. So my son Dante is part of the reason why I push so hard, because I have my purpose and he's very connected to it. Flesh of my flesh. Part of this it's him, and part of it is what I do. Your job takes up half of your awakened life. We sleep for 8 hours or 7 hours. The other one we commute. So most of what we are is what we do. You better get something that you like.
So you mentioned your son there a little bit. How do you strike the balance in terms of being an entrepreneur, which requires a lot of your time, and finding time to be with your son?
Look, I had, been driving from Marsabit in order to be at my son's school project by 10 o'clock. That's a 5 o'clock journey, right? I was based in Isiolo. I didn't have physical custody of my son, but I saw him every second weekend, right? And based in Isiolo, I never really thought my son should be coming there. I would rather him being here and access a better education, right? So it was me coming to visit him. And I did everything in my power to be there and to be seen. So it doesn't matter how good you are as an entrepreneur. Because if you're very good, you make a lot of money. If you fail as a parent, all of the rest, it's forgotten, because you had one job which they didn't decide to be born, right? We put them in this world. So after they are in, you need to be as good of a father as you are as good of a businessman. LeBron James is the best basketball player in the world. He's an incredible father. So he understood that he could be the GOAT. I think it's Michael Jordan, but he could be the GOAT, but he's definitely there in Mount Rushmore. So LeBron James, his legacy, he's not just being LeBron James, and it's the father of his 3 kids. And he's doing an excellent job, clearly. So even if you're very successful in whatever you do, if you don't take seriously parenting, if you don't fight for your kids, if you have to, then you're not doing something right.
Yeah. So this is the part of the podcast where I drift a little bit, and I call it the rapid fire questions. So I've prepared 10 questions for you. So there's no right or wrong answers in this segment. So it's just based on your experiences so far, and should be fun. Ready to go?
Go ahead.
Okay. So the first question is, what's the first career you dreamt of having as a kid?
I wanted to be an insurance agent like my dad. Look, I know it's not very exciting, but yeah, insurance agent like my father.
So the second is, if you had to eat only one meal for the rest of your life, what will it be?
That's so simple, man. Look at me. It would be pasta. I would eat pasta every day, because pasta can come in a million forms, and I can cook myself 100 types of pasta. So that definitely be pasta.
Pasta. Okay. So when you're not working, how do you like to spend your time?
I like the outdoors. I love going in nature, walks. I'm a big Karura fan. When I'm in Nanyuki, I love living in Nanyuki, by the way. I'm in Nairobi usually a week per month. My base is Nanyuki. So one day I can go to Samburu National Reserve, another day to Olpejeta, another day I go to Aberdeers. There's so many things that you can do. I like being out. And I'm an avid movie fan, so I do watch movies, not binge most of the time, but I do like that. But yeah, mostly I like to be out if I can.
Yeah, you can never go wrong with being in nature. So the first question, what are you afraid of most?
Being without meaning or do not signify something. Like, this is something, do you remember in school most teachers told you, what do you want to become, right? Before I say insurance agent. But what I knew was what I didn't want to become better. Yeah. And what I didn't want to become was transparent. Like, go through life without making any change, walk into a room and not being noticed, not in terms of looks or just energy. Like, my biggest fear was just drift through life, and it still is. And of course, it would be, lose what I love the most, my son, my family. Probably that loss of affect is, now that I can say that I did not become a transparent person, I can say my biggest fear is to lose my family.
So the fifth question, I think we know an answer to this, but I'll try it out. Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant?
No, I thought LeBron James, man. So Kobe is one of my role models. I'm a basketball player, and I looked up to Kobe also because he spoke Italian nearly like he spoke English, like native level, because he grew up in Italy, because his father was there playing. So Kobe was in Italy between 6 and 14. He speaks Italian, he spoke Italian so well. So when he died was devastating. And Kobe represents more than basketball. Kobe represents a mentality. the leaving everything on the court. That became also my MO. So it's horrible to put Michael Jordan but Michael Jordan was and is the greatest of all time. Kobe is a very close, player to him. But
If he had more time, I think could have done a little bit more.
I mean, did you know that he invested already into unicorn companies? He was going to become an incredible human being apart from basketball that he already was. You know, he was not a good husband once. He made possible to go back into this family, and he was a great father. That's the other thing, great father. So Kobe it was an incredible human being, but as a basketball player, no one is at the level of Michael Jordan.
So the sixth question, what's your favorite book?
Too many. I have so many. I love history. So one of my top three, I can give you a top three. I'm not sure if I can put one on top, but the Hadrian's Memoirs is a book by Marguerite Yourcenar talking about the memoirs of Emperor Hadrian, who was one of the most successful Roman emperor. And that was an incredible book for me. The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho was another incredible book, and the only book that I finished and started again immediately because it represented such a powerful message, right? Another book that I loved is but it's again connected to Rome. I love historical book. I don't read fiction. So in general, I can give you a genre. I love history. I read history. Right now, I'm reading *Sapiens*, by was it Noah or Joab? I forgot. Which talks about anthropology, and I'm also doing the history of Africa by Benedict Meredith, because I'm a history buff.
Yeah, that's a good collection of books right there. So the seventh question, if you could invite 3 people, dead or alive, to a party, who would they be?
Gosh, Kobe, number one. I would just want to be, one day close to him and talk to him. One is Kobe Bryant. The other one, Trevor Noah, looks like a funny person to be around, and I would love to be around him as well. And to be honest, don't like this. I could get so many historical figures, but you said party specifically, so it needs to be someone that is funny as well. Yeah. Silvio Berlusconi, our prime minister, former prime minister, and now he was not the best politician in the world. Let's face it, but his love of life and the billions that he had made him an incredible host for parties. So if you don't talk about his political agenda, but just his life, his parties were particularly good. They came up to the news, unfortunately, some of them. But as a wild card, Silvio Berlusconi would have been a great party person, not so much for a politician, but here it is.
So the 8th question, what was something you've done that made you extremely happy?
Risk the AGAR business and just putting everything I had and not giving up when that person stole money. I needed to go home. I took a month off. I went home and I needed that family recharge and sort of energy. And I talked to my parents. I was like, I don't want to give up. I think Arid lands are still my future, and I'm happy that I didn't give up right and there. I'm happy that I had a supporting family and a supporting friend, because my best friend, he lost money with me in the first enterprise, and he gave me more. That's a sort of trust. So I'm happy to have that family and that friend, and I'm happy that I didn't give up on myself and on them, but just persevere.
The 9th question, what quote resonates with you most?
Finally, someone that I have the straightaway answer. I actually live by a motto. I do. This motto is from a Roman poet and literature called Ovidio. He says, "Omni solum forti patria est," which is Latin. Omni solum forti patria est. Translated, it says, every soil or territory, solum is soil, right? But it means place, right? Every possible place is the country of the strong. It means that a strong person can live anywhere. And I live in another country. I lived in 5 different countries. Yes. That is not mine. So I know what it means, and I know the difficulties of living somewhere else. But if you're strong enough, you can live anywhere. That's my motto.
Powerful. That's the first time I'm hearing that one. So the last one, knowing what you know now, what advice could you give to your 18-year-old self?
You know what? I would go and just tell him, you go ahead and do your life, because the banal question, I mean, the answer that other people could give you is invest in Amazon or Apple. Yes. Every failure, every loss, every single thing that happened in my life led to where I am now. And this is exactly where I'm supposed to be in my path. So I would just tell him anything at all. Maybe one thing, stop drinking coffee first thing in the morning, because I have a horrible gastritis now. But something important, like don't do this. Do all of the mistakes that you need to make. Do exactly everything that you want. And at 18 years old, I had pretty clear ideas. I knew that I wanted to use my 20s to travel the world. I knew that I wanted to use my 30s to establish my life and to have kids and a family, and my 40s to build an empire, which is exactly what I'm doing. I'm building a castle here. In my 50s, I thought about looking at possibly going back to Italy, maybe helping in government. And by 60s, I want to live in a villa in Lower Tuscany, studying the Etruscan civilization and being a consultant that makes like $10,000 per day. So I would just say, just carry on, do what you're doing.
Yeah, I think that's a great perspective to have as well. So that was fun. Those are 10 questions. Thank you very much for making time to be on the podcast. How can guys find your products and find some of your work?
As I was saying, I brought a number of props. Now, specifically, I wanted, since, this is the organic guy, and being organic specifically, because I've done the organic certification, right? A headache. Most of the certification is about traceability. And when we talk about circularity, we are really trying to avoid as much waste as possible. Even if this plastic container would be a big no for those green activists, which I fully understand, it has a stigma. Yeah. But the thing is, when you put things on a bracket, which is what we'll be doing with hospitality client, these will be now refillable. Because even if aluminum may look better than plastic, my friend, if we cannot recycle either, this one even have a higher carbon footprint than that. So these sometimes look the right way. If you put it somewhere that it cannot be taken and is refilled, this has a very long lifeline. This one, it drops once and customers don't like, clients don't like to see dents and everything. So we are at Village Market. Our store is there, but more will come. We're also in Nanyuki with our HQ and production. But if you want to talk to us, the handles will come hopefully after this, and you can talk to us about having the hospitality line, which is the aloe line for your house or for your business. And we started with a lot of new products. This is a hand sanitizer with aloe and frankincense. So again, ingredients from the north. And now we have beard products. We have body butters. There is a lot that can be bought. And as you see, we reinvest in arid lands and community projects. And we will hopefully export the line. I'm going to Europe next month, and I will be hopefully creating a bridge between Kenya and Italy and the EU in general. So just check us up, follow our pages, and come and buy.
So big vision, big future lies ahead in terms of AGAR. So be sure to check them out. And I think there are a lot of products that you may want to be part of. So till the next podcast, remember to be organic. Cheers.